Adventure Ho, Illumineers, and welcome back to another episode of the DuckTale Dads, a Lorcana Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mac, joined again by Nathaniel and Ryan. The crew is back together again. This week, we plan to talk a little bit about Set Champs recap for Winterspell. Another DLC happened in Brazil, so we're seeing Lorcana expand around the globe. We'll talk a little bit about that and things we've noticed as we've kind of honed in on the Winterspell meta and now looking forward to our final topic, Wilds Unknown. Specifically, we wanted to chat a little bit about the legendaries. Everything's been revealed up to this point, so I think all the three of us are hyper-focused on the legendaries, and we want to see how that now fits into the core constructed. And then eventually, I think in an upcoming episode in the near future here, this is basically Infinity season. A lot of the upcoming tournaments will be getting into Infinity. So as we start chatting about these legendaries this week for Core Constructed and what excites us about it, Infinity is just around the horizon. We got to start thinking about that too. But first and foremost, before we get into all those topics, let's do what's new in your world. Ryan, what is new in your world this week?
A couple of personal updates. We hosted a birthday party, and our 1-year-old is now teething, so that's fun. Lots of cuddles, lots of drool, and lots of crying. So we're getting through it. And hopefully we can sleep through the night tonight, and fingers crossed that goes well. Otherwise, there was a bit of a power outage last week, so my internet has been on the fritz since then, which is also a joy to navigate. So if I drop off of this recording, I apologize to the listeners that I will not be joining back in, just because I don't know what's going to be happening with the internet if it goes out. So that's on the personal front. On the Lorcana front, I was just kind of playing and staying connected with the game through the online play system, playing a little bit of Core Constructed, playing a little bit of Set 12 Core Constructed, trying to get a feel for some of these new cards that we're going to talk about, especially the legendaries. And then also just playing a lot of Sealed, actually. Just fun to mix it up a little bit. They have different versions of Sealed that they're rolling out every now and then. The creators of the site are, so it's fun to just kind of stay connected in that way. And as we approach Wilds Unknown and I prepare my pocketbook, my wallet, for the hemorrhaging of the money that will occur, and waiting to see exactly what comes out in terms of high-quality cards and high-quality card combinations, for that matter. See what Set 12 cards can break the Core Constructed meta, or break into the Core Constructed meta, rather. And I think there's a couple of legendaries we're going to talk about that are going to be able to do that. But we'll get into that later. Nathaniel, what's new in your world?
So I'm really glad, Ryan, that you talked about the cards that are breaking in and just like the excitement around Wilds, because I'm also excited to purchase these cards. I think I held back a little bit on the last set, and to a lesser extent even Whispers. So kind of figured that this would be a higher spend set because it is Pixar after all. So from a Lorcana front, I did play in one last Set Champs on this final weekend, which was great. There were actually quite a few that did happen this last weekend. I think there were like 8 in the Minneapolis area. So yeah, pretty high amount for the last weekend. So that's cool. And on the personal front, we celebrated my twins' birthday with a few other people a little bit bigger, so we just did a little small thing on their actual birthday last week. This weekend we did something a little bit bigger for them, and we celebrated with an ice cream social, so that was super fun. And I think with anyone who's been like in the Midwest can kind of know that like late April, it's kind of tough to gauge. Are you going to have 80? Are you going to have 40? Are you going to have snow? So, or is it rainy maybe? So we kind of got like a little bit closer to 80 than we did to snow, thankfully, but it wasn't like the most comfortable day for an ice cream social, but they still ate plenty of it. They still had tons of fun. So yeah, it was a solid weekend with able to kind of pivot both between like a Set Champs and also celebrate my little guys. Mac, what's new in your world?
Not much Lorcana, but first and foremost, mine was a lot of just family visiting. I had a pretty good celebration with some family over the course of the last weekend, as well as we hung out with my brother, his wife, and their kid as well, and along with my kids, and they kind of ran around. My brother's son is younger than my two boys, and my two boys are just jazzed to show their little cousin everything that they can do and want to teach him everything. So it's kind of funny to watch that relationship blossom as well. And yeah, they had a good time. So very exciting. Other than that, I was kind of caught off guard by DLC Brazil. Did kind of forgot that was happening, and then as I was scrolling on my phone on YouTube, I guess my algorithm is now just like everything Lorcana. So JDZ's stream and the others that he was streaming with popped up, and I was like, oh yeah, that's happening. So I kind of the tail end of Saturday and then definitely Sunday, I picked up the Top Cut to just follow that a little bit, and because it's always nice watching really good players play Lorcana. So I found that really enjoyable. I didn't do much playing or online testing myself. I did not participate in a set champs, so I got my Lorcana fix through exactly that, watching DLC Brazil, and very much excited to see how the game is expanding globally. I think in other areas, this was kind of Ravensburger's intent, right, for the duration of season 2. And then hopefully in season 3, we just take everything that has been introduced, as well as kind of the old guard with Europe and North America, and then just expand that even further. So season 3 Beyond the Horizon looks really, really fun. No pun intended with the Beyond the Horizon card. But yeah, overall, really good weekend, and looking forward to what's coming around the corner, because there's a lot of excitement there as well. So, like I said in the intro, we're going to talk a little bit about set champs, and that's kind of the first thing we want to get into. Only one of us participated in set champs this past weekend. Nathaniel, how did it go? What's the recap like? This is the final weekend of Winterspell, so I know you were excited about trying out a new list, so why don't you tell the people how it went?
So I made the statement last week of trying to play a little bit more free and a little bit more with the, hey, let's try to just really focus on having fun, play a list that you like, play cards that you enjoy playing, right? And so I went back to a deck that I enjoyed at the end of last set, which was Yerpal, otherwise known as Amber Amethyst. And I did a build that was a little bit interesting. It actually didn't have any Dumbo, which seems insane for like a non-super aggressive Yerpal or Amber Amethyst list. I think in prior sets, Amber Amethyst was really known as this like hyper aggressive deck. It could like shoot tons of lore onto the board really early, get insta lore through things like Goat and bouncing goats and stuff like that, gathering knowledge and wisdom, things like that I think were really common in those types of builds. I went with more of what we've seen more recently, with a little bit more of a control-ish mid-range list. I can't say control in front of you guys because it's not quite that. But when you do have an 8-cost uninkable in your list, it feels a little bit bigger, a little bit slower. So this list relied a lot on reloading through the library. So I got to make plenty of fun jokes about how I was moving my characters into the library so they could spend some time reading before they'd get banished and draw me more cards. And so it still had like a lot of the standard stuff, like Junior Woodchuck guidebooks. It had Genie back in that list just to kind of give it some additional pressure, but also that card draw engine as well. And it did have a few Demonas and the Purple Hades in it. So cards I have been playing a lot lately. The card that I went really back and forth with, and again, I did take this list. I was perusing online. I'm a net decker. I admit it. But I found this list, and the one I wasn't totally sold on it. It was 3 copies of Finders Keepers, which is a card that I think a lot of folks have been sort of out on for a while, right? Because you're kind of taking usually a turn or most of a turn off to just like refill your hand. But in a deck that has a board wipe, that sometimes is totally okay if you board wipe and then the next turn you like reload heavy and maybe lay down like one thing. That feels pretty good. So I did just full send it, and it was a ton of fun. I think it's also a list that people don't always have a lot of practice against, something like that. An Amber Amethyst build that's focusing more on that type of stuff, like board wiping and using like location synergy to draw cards that way. Very much felt like a Ruby Amethyst of old in some ways, right? Where you're going to kind of prepare for the be prepareds, pun definitely intended, by moving your guys into a library and drawing a million cards so that like even if the board wipes happen from you or your opponent, you're always fully stocked with a full grip of cards. So it was I really enjoyed it. I think I even missed multiple times like library get you a lore at the start of your turn because frankly I'm not that used to playing locations more recently either. But yeah, it was cool. And I think one thing I also observed about the weekend is once again, there's just so much variety in this game right now that I think I really hope stays through this upcoming set and beyond when we hit rotation. There was Amber Steel, there was Red Green Burn, there was Boosty Boys, Amber Ruby, and then Neon Yurple, right? Like again, it's like lots of different ink combinations I think is always a really good thing. And also just like hearing how other set champs went. Like I heard one of our more recent attendees on the podcast, Jenna from Love and Lorcana, won a set champs on Purple Steel. So it's not dead, right? So I think that was cool too, just to hear like that they had plenty of variety at their set champs as well. And Purple Steel was able to still have some success. It always makes me happy. So that was super fun. I think one of my highlights of my experience this weekend was when I played the Amber Ruby deck. When you have cards like Library and you know that you're running board wipes and they're running board wipes, but you get to refill from your location. I put him into some really tough situations because I'd always have like 3 or 4 guys in the library, which basically said like, you have to board wipe or I'm going to quest for a bunch. But then if you board wipe me, I'm going to draw a ton. So there was one game where I think I drew like 11 cards from my guys just getting blown up while they were in the library. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, Yurple, super fun. And I was very much successful, I think, in my goal of playing a list that I liked, I was going to have fun with. And I did do fairly well. I ended up getting runner-up, so I'll take that. Ultimately lost to our friend Ernie on Amber Steel. But you know, I think, again, if the focus was fun, then success was had.
That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations on the runner-up. It seems that Amber is kind of taken over, kind of in the dark horse of this set. But now upon like release of Wilds Unknown, Amber is like, oh my gosh, is this the new color that everyone needs to get play sets on? Or are you just going to feel super behind? I know Blurple and Purple Steel have kind of been local favorites here. So I'm actually encouraged by the fact that you ran into a set champs that were still running a lot of these niche decks, so to speak, in the Winterspell meta. If there's one kind of set champs recap that I want to put kind of a bow on this on set 11, it's the fact that I have been pleasantly surprised with how wide the meta has been this set champs season. Sure, you have your favorites like the aforementioned Blurple and Purple Steel, right? But the only set champs I went to, there was 9 unique decks. In conversations with you guys on previous episodes, you guys have experienced a lot of variety in the deck builds that you've seen at your set champs as well. So that's really encouraging to me that the meta seems expansive. It seems wide. And there's a lot of, I don't know, it's just catches you off guard in a good way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that's my one note from the Winterspell set champs is, yay, it's getting there. We're expanding, and this is exactly what I think we wanted. So before we move on, what do you guys think? Any last thoughts on the Winterspell set champs meta?
Yeah, Mac, I want to double down on something you just said about Amber, because it definitely is getting a buff once again in the upcoming set. But when you look at the identity of that, we talked last set about how Amethyst was the super strong color. You know, I ran like a different Amethyst list at 4 consecutive outings, and it was performing really well. Whether you could just kind of go in a ton of different directions, and it was such a strong core ink color that the other 20 cards could sort of change slightly the direction of what you were doing, but the Amethyst core was so strong. When you look at Amber right now, like I was just talking about how Amber Amethyst is a really strong deck, but like Amber Emerald is dogs, which is going crazy, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Boosty Boys is Amber Ruby, which has very much shown to be a strong deck, and people have won set champs with it, and has its own place in any meta. Amber Steel is definitely back. That has won, I think, a lot of local set champs in our area. And then even Amber Sapphire, right, being this like bigger control deck that we currently have right now, it feels like Amber is, again, this ink color that can stretch a lot of different directions, and it's really stinking good. So I think it's very much something that you're going to have to be prepared for, and the companion ink color feels a lot like the situation we had with Amethyst, where that just sort of says what direction the Amber deck is going to go, but almost every Amber deck feels quite good right now, of those kind of core ones that we see, right, of the 5 combinations I just outlined. Ryan, what do you think?
I mean, who really knew that if you give the aggro ink color a board wipe, that all of a sudden it covers the entire meta? Who'da thunk? I think what we're seeing is just this divergence from previous ink identities, and we're kind of in that bridging period between the first 8 sets where Amber had a more of an aggressive ink identity, and then the past 3 sets where it's been more of this like adding in some control tools or like toolboxy options or ways to fight certain meta decks in a convenient way. And so namely Horseman Strikes was a great way of bringing that more into a control aspect. And then just having some of the stat lines that Amber has been able to print forever. Since there may be some vanilla cards get a little bit higher willpower and still qualifying strength numbers, so like 3-cost Bagheera 4/4 or a 4-cost Nakoma 4/6, like it's just big characters that are going to fit well into a control shell with whatever other characters you're able to add in on top of that. So like they're not like the staples of the control shell, but they add a lot to it in that sense. So they kind of had these options laying around, and now I'm terrified a little bit of Set 12 Core Constructed. I think Set 12 Infinity will be a very healthy landscape after people have an opportunity to work with it and live in it and kind of figure it out. But Set 12 Core Constructed, I think, is going to be Amber everywhere, Amber always, and Amber forever, because it seems like they have Amber has some very, very strong cards coming, and they already have a very strong core already. So it'll be trying to fit maybe 80 or 96 cards down into 60 and trying to see like, okay, am I playing a mono Amber deck, or am I trying to actually fit in other cards from other colors and see what it looks like there. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see where the brilliant minds go, and I'll steal some of their ideas and work it into my own options too. But I'm very excited to see that DLC Brazil kind of provided this little capstone for Winterspell in a competitive sense in the core constructed meta, as people start to transition into Infinity and figure out that format as well for the upcoming major tournaments. And so especially at the tail end of Winterspell being this like capstone of the core constructed meta, it was really neat to see that kind of, top it off in a new market as well for Lorcana, which is also really cool to have that new market joining the official competitive scene, and then also providing this like neat little bow for the Winterspell meta.
Yeah, and Ryan, perfect transition into DLC Brazil, because that's what we want to chat about next. Kind of blending not only what you were getting into here as the capstone event for Winterspell, but in this Amber conversation, Amber was prevalent, very much so, especially in the top 4. So I think this is a good way to kind of continue to speak on the viability of the Amber color right now. So Brazil happened. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe none of you know, I don't know, but I believe Brazil is obviously a new region that's introduced in Season 2, and I don't think it feeds, because it's not North American, so it won't feed into a North American championship. I think it's its own South American championship. I really don't know. That's something we'll correct on, but either way, I think it's really cool that they're expanding all over the world. Brazil is a huge country, and from what I know and I have been learning over the course of the last weekend, has a surprisingly really, a strong TCG feel just in general, which has been fun to follow and learn more about. But Amber was in 3 of the top 4 decks. I know the Ultimate Winner we'll get into who that was in a second, was Dogs. That Dogs player beat another Dogs player in the semifinals. And then the champion, the runner-up was also playing the Amber Steel variant. The final one was Blurple, and I believe that was DKP. He made it the top 4. But the winner was none other than Zan Syed again, who was the winner of DLC Ghent in Europe a month or 2 ago. And he is just running rampant on this Dogs build this might be the greatest, how do I say this, professional play mastery of a single deck in Lorcana's history is what Zan has done with the Dogs list over the course of the Winterspell season in the last month or 2. He's won 2 DLCs, which is absolutely insane. So congratulations to Zan. He is officially the first 3-time DLC champion. Previously, it was him and Frank were the only multi-winner ones with 2, and now he has now surpassed that one more with 3. Congratulations, Zan. Wow. That just goes to show that like how effective Dogs can be in a wider field. When we see wider fields, as we prepped for, I made the joke about it as we were starting to prep for this set champ season, like we seem to prep for a DLC field here locally when really we should have been prepping for more variety. Well, at a DLC, you tend to see those top 5 decks more often, and that's where Dogs seems to really shine. Yeah, Dogs is scary is what I'm learning in a big field, at least in this meta. We'll see how it changes next meta. It's probably going to stick around for the next set for sure until rotation comes around. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on Zan's win? Kudos to him. Congratulations. Nathaniel, you got any thoughts on Dogs? I know, Zan, when you first got into the game, you adopted his Emerald Steel build. And you've kind of been following him ever since you joined. It's just, wow, he's on a tear.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that he has a very good idea about what is the best deck, and he will just try to play that better than everyone else. And if he can do that, then he can win. I think he's actually said those exact words before. So, I think his Dogs build is really good into Dogs mirrors. I've certainly ran into it during testing before, where it creates these complete non-games where it kind of feels like it doesn't really matter what you do, you're just going to lose. And when you play a player that's that good and knows, I think, precisely the right line to take with each of his turns, it's going to always be very challenging. I think what's also interesting is I think he was very forthcoming with the type of deck he was building. Like, he told people about it, and I think he also may have even made the mention of like, hey, yeah, Tramp's super busted, maybe we should see it get banned. But like, he's running that card in his list because like he's basically saying like it's that good. So I think that's really interesting, and I think it kudos to him because it shows just how good he is, where he can kind of not be secretive and he could just be open about like, this is what I'm doing and this is really busted, and even though you already know that, he still wins. So I believe he was also the first person to go completely undefeated throughout an entire run and I think he might have done that at Ghent too, I'm not totally sure, but he did not lose a single match all weekend in Brazil. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's so good. It was crazy to watch him. He was so in control. I watched the semifinals and the finals, and when he played in the semifinals against the other Dogs player, you could just tell, you could see on the frustration, the body language of the other player. It's just like, I'm playing the exact same deck, and why do I feel useless? Like, that's kind of the body language that the other player was giving off. And then once you got to the finals, Amber Steel, I think, has a fairly decent matchup, especially if you get Angel and you have all these removal songs, but you got to make sure you navigate that between the Chromacon, right? Because if you're just going to be throwing snowballs or throwing damage spells, then it's just like the Chromacon can just bounce everything back. But the Amber Steel player, ultimately went to 4 games, but Zan started out 2-0, and the third game, which was kind of cool, Chief Powhatan, that 5/5 bodyguard, the Amber Steel player got into this loop where he would quest with the Chief, wouldn't play anything, he'd throw a snowball with Angel or something, or play a damage spell. The person would then bounce the Chief, and then he would immediately play the Chief with his unused ink and put it into bodyguard. So he was like in this continuous loop of like protecting all of his characters, and it was a slow burn, but he eventually got there. And then Zan ultimately got the win with the Under the Sea combo, whereas the Amber Steel player, there are a lot of kind of weenie characters in that specific deck list. So once you see Under the Sea, it's kind of game over at that point. But yeah, it's crazy how strong that deck has performed over the course of the last, really since Fabled. We saw some popularity pop up when we went to DLC Milwaukee. That was kind of the surprise deck there, was, oh geez, is this dog's list actually really good? And now it's only gotten stronger over the course of the last 2 full sets that have been released, and none other, it's a 2-time winner with the same person. So I'm excited to see how the new toys in the Amber Emerald ink colors kind of factor into what dogs and the dog's identity will be. Or maybe we'll just see one last hurrah of the dogs list before ultimately rotation comes in. But yeah, Nathaniel, I loved your point about like Zan just saying like, yeah, Tramp's really good. It should probably be banned, but good players play good cards until they're banned, and they just take advantage of it because they're so strong. And he definitely made very good use out of it. So any other points you want to make about the DLC and what we've seen for Winterspell?
So I think one other interesting thing is when Zan had played Emerald Steel, which was the deck that I joined Lorcana and then started to gravitate to, it felt like that deck was in some ways really targeting what was very popular in the North American scene, which was Ruby Sapphire, because basically they're spending a lot of resources to ramp, and if this discard engine got going pretty early, you basically just blocked them from doing everything they wanted to do because there wasn't enough card draw unless they saw some very specific cards. A rat who shall not be named. But it feels interesting because that felt like a very natural, in some ways, counter to like what was very popular in like the North American kind of wider DLC circuit at that time, which is crazy to say that was almost 2 years ago now. But dogs kind of has been like one of the top dogs, pun intended, for a while now, like since rotation. So I think that's interesting, as it's sort of like saying, I'm actually gonna take this like top dog and I'm gonna be the best with it. And clearly has. I think one of the things I heard him once say too was people will say, oh, you know, I can beat the Emerald Amber list of dogs. It's not that great. But then they'll play someone who's like really, really, really good with it, and all of a sudden it's like, I feel like I can't win. Like there's no way I can win now. And so I think it's a really high skill cap deck too, which we've talked a lot about how Emerald just generally feels like a weird color. It's interesting, kind of takes a while to figure things out, and sort of how does it fit? What does it really want to do with your deck? But it does feel like the dogs list is one where if you are really good with that set of 60 cards, you're going to be really, really hard to beat. And I think Zan is a great example of that. Where there are other decks where, you know, call them brain smooth ones, where it's a little bit more obvious, like the lines that kind of make sense in whether you're on the play or on the draw in certain matchups, right? Like it becomes a bit more clear, I think, like what are the good cards, where I think there is a high skill cap here, but if you feel like you're Thanos. And for what it's worth too, I'm not a great dogs player, but I did test with it a little bit to see what it felt like and see like, what does this struggle with? What's good against this? And there are times where like even someone who's not that great of a dogs player, like when it does the thing, aka you get to like cheat out tons of early ink, you get your tramp, you filter through your deck, and you get to like board wipe someone super early in the game and they just basically can't come back. It does feel very powerful when it does do that. I think what then kind of separates these really, really high-end players is when you can't do the like totally busted thing, that you want to be able to do, how are you pivoting, right? And what are the decisions that you're making to make it so, depending on what the opponent ink color or what they're doing, you can still counter them even when your deck maybe doesn't like fully brick, but doesn't do like the crazy strong top end thing that it could possibly do. And I think that gets highlighted by the fact that a player like that in a best of 3 just finds a way to always win too.
Yeah, you mentioned it perfectly. It's definitely the high skill cap. But once you reach that mastery, that's exactly it, right? It's like, it's the most effective deck once you get to that mastery level. So a crazy deck, not something that my brain wraps its head around, or at least I don't have the time to practice it. So congratulations to Zan, 3-time DLC winner. And I'm excited to see where it goes from a Worlds perspective. He's obviously earned his ticket ×2 now at this point. So he's going to Worlds. Very deserving player to go to Worlds in terms of his just flat out skill. And you could quite consider him the best player in the world right now because he's performing at it, considering the amount of success he's had over the last month or two. So with that being said, I think we can put a wrap on not only DLC Brazil, but not the Winterspell meta, because we are a week or 2 away. What is it? 2 weeks away officially from pre-released for Wilds Unknown. And up to this point, we are recording on April 27th of 2026. And all of the cards have been revealed, but we really want to narrow in and just have a discussion on the Wilds Unknown legendaries. What excites us? What ink think got the most spoiled? Best, worst? Are there trends within these legendaries? And just have a conversation about that. For those of you who are not on video, you haven't heard Ryan's voice for a reason. His internet did officially poo-poo. So it's just me and Nathaniel for the rest of the night. But I'm glad we got his 2 cents in on the set chance recap, and some of his ideas at the first part of the episode here. But he will be back next week. So Wilds Unknown legendaries. There's a lot going on here. So Nathaniel, you pulled up Woody here on the screen for those of you on video. It makes me want to think that you want to start with him. So this card's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I figured we'd go in ink order here. And which unfortunately also means that we're going to start talking about some of the best legendaries right off the rip, which includes this Woody. And I think there's been some mixed feelings about this Woody. So for those who are not watching, this is the legendary Woody. He is a 5-cost uninkable, 1 strength, 5 willpower, quest for 2, shift 3. Whenever you play this character, whenever this character quests, draw a card. Then you may play a character with cost 2 or less for free. And then his other ability is your other toy characters get +1 willpower. So not only is he buffing up your toy characters, he also you get to draw a card when he quests, and you get to also cheat out a 2-cost or less character. So he's kind of doing a lot of things. I think the question for this card will become, if he comes out on turn 5 without the shift, right? Is he significantly less valuable that far into the game? Looks kind of to be slanted more towards like an aggressive list, right? Because he's cheating out cheap characters. He's buffing up your characters from the willpower perspective, so you can maybe get a few more extra quests in. So I think that will be really interesting. But just looking at the card itself, I feel like this is a really good card. It's probably in the top half at least of the legendaries for this upcoming set. And it's Woody, so that's awesome. I would be thrilled to pull this card. Mac, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I still at first glance, and granted, like, I am not a pro by any means, so excuse me, I don't know. I'm not able to like deck build as effectively as all these other people have over the course of the last week since the whole set has been released. But I still think this is the best legendary of the list. There's an argument that the next card that I'm assuming you're going to pull up based on ink color trend, there's an argument to be made by a lot of people that its amber counterpart might be better. But I just think in an aggressive list, cheating out extra characters while also drawing a card, it like checks every box besides the only downside is that it's uninkable, right? And when you're cheating out lore, you can get away with, or not lore, cheating out ink to play characters. You can almost get away with that uninkable count a little bit more, right? Again, in Amber, we see Grandmother Willow, like the lantern still exists, right? So you're able to still play this character quicker depending on the setup of what you've played in previous turns. But I think this Woody Jungle Guide is awesome. I'm so glad that it's involved in the Set Champs kit. This is the card that everyone will be earning. I think this is the perfect card to get people to go to stores and have bigger crowds at Set Champs. Knowing that what we talked about last week and kind of lower trends in attendance for Winterspell, I think with Wilds Unknown, we'll see those attendance numbers, go up significantly. And the one thing about this that actually makes me happy is I will not feel bad if I don't pull this, because if I go to 1 or 2 Set Champs, ideally I'll get my play set through with the Set Champs promos, right? So that's something for you listeners out there. Sure, if you're trying to get the best cards right away, this is one you're going to want to seek and get. But just know that if you're going to attend Set Champs and you get those non-foil promos just for attending, and if you happen to make top 8, you're going to walk out with 2 of these cards anyways as part of your play set that you need to build future decks with this coming with sets 13 through 13, 14, 15, 16, basic math. At least the next rotation of sets, when this one would be on the chopping block to be rotated out for the next rotation, right? So I'm very much on board with this. I think it's just cool. And I think not only this card, but as a whole, as I continue to ramble, the Wilds Unknown Vine artwork that is filtered out through like the entire set, I think is awesome. I think I mentioned it once before, like starting with Winterspell, really. We saw Winterspell, with Whispers, and then Winterspell, and now this. Like, they're bringing the theme of the set into the cards a lot more, and it's a lot more prevalent. I love it, and this card is really cool and fits that theme very much so. So, love Woody.
Mac, I'm really glad you mentioned the fact about the Set Champs thing too, right? That you will be able to get access to this pretty easily if you can make it to a few of those. So, yeah, I wouldn't get too upset if you don't pull a bunch of these early, because that is definitely on the table. And speaking from someone who only played in 2 Set Champs and has 5 non-foil Tinkerbells from this set, that is very accurate. I didn't need to pull any of those to still be able to have some playable copies. So this is the first of the Amber Legendaries. I think this card also gets to be made incredibly strong if on your next turn, as an Amber player, you play the next Amber Legendary, which is Dale, ready for his shot. So for those who are not looking at the screen right now, Dale, ready for a shot, is a 4-cost inkable 0/4, so doesn't sound too crazy yet, right? He quests for 2, but his ability is Spike Suit. During challenges, your characters deal damage with their willpower instead of their strength. So we often refer to Amber as having a lot of weenies, or not strong strength character, high strength characters, right? But oftentimes they do actually have a fairly strong willpower stat. This is the type of card where if this comes behind some of these more aggressive lists with like high questing, like low strength but high willpower characters, and if you can't remove this, it becomes really scary. So I think it's also important to note with this card that it's during challenges that they get to use that willpower as how much damage they're going to deal, because this card, amongst anything else that would be like a 1/4 or 2 strength or whatever with high willpower, that would still get hit by things like Under the Sea or anything that's like based on their actual strength stat. This is only for challenges that you get this weird sort of reversal buff thing. I think for me, looking at this card right away, I see some crazy things that you could do with like Daisy, Donald's date, right? Where if you get to quest a couple times with her early, great. But like once you quest with her and you have this thing out, now if somebody wants to remove that Daisy, they have to take 4 damage back from her. That's so crazy. So I think this is going to be a pretty popular card in a lot of different Amber builds because of the fact that so many of those characters indeed have like a lower strength stat and a high willpower stat. Man, even think about some of the top end cards too. Like imagine a Surfer Stitch dealing 8 damage.
Yeah, that's wild. And not only that, to your point about like Amber characters tending to have lower strength but a lot of willpower, thinking back to a legendary from last set in Ohana Means Family, swinging with these characters using this spike suit ability, getting a bunch of damage on all these high willpower Amber characters, and then playing in Ohana to just draw a ton of cards off of that, I think is a crazy combo to think about, and could really break the game in terms of like how powerful I think Amber is trending. In Winterspell, it's just kind of funny, or not Winterspell, I'm thinking all the way back to Fabled, like everyone was like, Amber's so bad, Amber's trash, and now like these past 2 sets, Amber has gotten so much love. Now let's just move that to the red color ink, please, or at least make some of the red ones inkable at the very least. But yeah, I think Amber is well on its way to being the favorite color, at least at first look. And I think Dale and Woody are for sure the top of that list on everyone's mind. One thing to keep in mind with Dale, if you still have your play sets of Baby Sisus and Headless Horseman, the Ruby Legendary from Whispers in the Well, those are going to be some effective cards for the like spot banish removal. And I am personally predicting a rise on those type of decks. So keep that in mind if you're going to be a player that's going to trend and try out a lot of these Amber decks. The aforementioned Ruby that needs some love, maybe those past cards that we thought were kind of strong but just didn't fit, might start making them their way out a little bit more and having more popularity as a result of these Amber cards that we're seeing. So one thing in mind about Dale, he is still a 0 strength character and can easily be banished by things like that, or to your point, Under the Sea. But still, really good card.
Yeah, I genuinely think that might just be the best legendary, but we'll see with some of these other ones too, because there are still some good ones to be had amongst the other ink colors. So next is Amethyst, and this is an ink that I think got plenty of love in the last couple sets as far as legendaries go. I think certainly Amethyst got 2 of the best legendaries in Whispers with Demona and Hades. But the first here is going to be Snow White Merry as the Morning. She is a 2 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1, 3 cost inkable. First ability is whenever this character quests, you may return chosen 7 dwarfs character of yours to your hand to draw a card. And the second ability is Never Forgotten. During an opponent's turn, when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand. So kind of an interesting, like, if she's banished in a challenge, comes back to your hand, like we've seen plenty of cards with that ability. I think the dwarf synergy here for the 6 weeks that we get to actually have this could be a card I think with like a dock chain could go crazy, where if you play this character on 3, you dump, maybe your art, or at some point in the game, right, you play this character and she doesn't get removed. The turn that you quest her, if you like dump your hand and play a dock, then you could quest with this Snow White and return the dock card to your hand. It kind of acts like what I think we've seen some people start to do with the 2/1 Olaf character. I think he's a 1 cost where when he gets banished, you can return one of your characters, any character, to your hand. This would be and usually folks with like a purple steel build would return the dock to their hand so they can burn their hand out, draw 2 more cards again by playing him. This could have some interesting dock synergy. I just think it's a little bit too specific. If there was like a theme deck, I think, yeah, that this could potentially have some synergy, but this is a significant power down when you compare this to like the Dale card we just talked about, right, Mac?
Yeah, and the only thought I really have on this is this reminds me a lot of the Yen Sid brooms builds of old from sets 1 through 4, and we saw a lot of the magic brooms with Yen Sid, and Yen Sid just got stronger based on how many brooms you had on there. This gives me this vibe. is the Snow White just gets stronger based on how many more Seven Dwarfs characters you have. So if you're looking for more of those thematic decks, I think this is something that would be really fun for those types of players, which is something I enjoy, that not every legendary has to be just uber top tier 1, just break the game. You still have these where they're still strong in their own right when played in the right deck. And so that's just what I have with this one. If you like the Seven Dwarves and you like that play style, there are a lot more that are being released with this set. And not only that, I think there are an action or two that helps filter the Seven Dwarves even more to pair well with this Snow White. So if that's your bread and butter, I would get play sets and focus on and nabbing those cards. But yeah, that's the vibe I have, is the Yen Sid brooms. This is the Snow White Seven Dwarves for sure.
Now, for those Amethyst players who might cry saying this card isn't that great then because I don't want to do the theme deck, well, the next card is at first glance pretty good, I'd say, and that is the 5-cost Amethyst Luisa Madrigal, Confident Climber. She is a 6/4 shift 3. Quest for 1, and her ability is I Can Take It. So pay 1 ink, move up to 1 damage from chosen character of yours to this character. Then, if this character has 3 or more damage, move all damage from this character to chosen opposing character. So very much in line with the damage movement thing that Amethyst has come to be really known for. Mac, you made this point about 6/4 being a really interesting stat line. It would be great if it were flipped, probably. And I think I agree with that take on this. The positive thing is, just like Woody, this does have a 1-cost vanilla-ish, I say because she actually does have Challenger +2, but there is a 1-cost Luisa that this could shift on. So there is a world where maybe just the threat of this being shifted on the other Luisa slows down some of the faster decks because they don't want to get punished by this big Luisa. But I think just the two of these compared to the 2 Amber cards that we just saw, yeah, I don't think Amethyst is getting quite the same love this set.
Yeah, and it's about time, right? Amethyst has been strong for too long. But yeah, to the point about the 6/4 stat line, like it can get absolutely nuked by He Hurls Thunderbolts. Depending on the decks you play, Strength of a Raging Fire, like 4 willpower in the grand scheme of things, and those types of decks aren't really that strong, right? And at first glance too, if like you're playing Sapphire who ramps on turn 2, who's going to have a 4-cost character on turn 3, especially if you're playing Sapphire Steel, like you're going to be able to sing those removal damage songs pretty early. So, or on the flip side, you're playing the Singer list in Amber Steel, right? You're going to be able to sing those removal songs early, which I think I don't think those decks are going anywhere, so just be cautious with Luisa. The ability is great. If you can keep Luisa on the field, you can pay 1 ink, essentially. You can, as long as you have 3 damage on her, right? It's very, very conditional. And what I have become to learn about this game is the more conditions that are in effect, the harder it is for a card to be effective. And so over the past week, as I've looked at this card, with lower willpower and the fact that her ability is very conditional, maybe it won't be very good. So it's actually become lower on my list, and to a greater extent with just the 2 Amethyst legendaries in general. Ironically, with how much I've talked about Amethyst just being way too strong, this might be the weakest pair of legendaries of this set, in my opinion, at first glance. Again, not a deck builder, so I'm more than willing to be proven wrong, but who knows? We'll see how this fits in to other decks as we start seeing the first couple weeks come around following pre-release. But
I do think, Mac, there might be room for this card, maybe, in a Blurple list, because she could sing the new version of How Far I'll Go, right? I think that matters, and then she also would get, because she's just sung that, she would also get Ward, which would matter to kind of give you another turn to sort of do some stuff. But yeah, I agree. Definitely a step down from what we've seen from an Amethyst perspective in the more recent sets. I think no real argument there from me. All right, let's get into Emerald. Mac, why don't you give the listeners the lowdown on this one?
Sure. The first one is the Queen, Devious Disguise. It is a 4-cost inkable, 5 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1. First ability, Evil Scheme. When you play this character, you may draw a card. If you do, each opponent gains 2 lore. Seems interesting. And then you have Jealous Heart, the second ability. While an opponent has more lore than you, this character gets +2 lore. So it's kind of very much on brand with the Queen and Snow White, right? It's kind of fun where like you're making a deal with kind of like Hades. That's kind of what all the villains do in Disney. Checks out. Where you're giving your opponent a benefit, but you capitalize on that benefit. So again, one trend that I'm noticing here in these legendaries is low willpower. So we'll see how effective they're going to be with these lower willpower characters. But I find it interesting. The first one, Evil Scheme, don't be tempted about drawing a card when you play this character. You can, it's a May ability, especially if you're playing aggro, just don't give them more lore, right? But if you're playing like mid-range control, giving them more lore to then benefit on the back end of that. This is where I see this card having some interesting play. As we've talked about before, Nathaniel, with Ryan too, Ryan always makes the point where this is kind of like the parasite color and the color that like, what is it actually doing? What does Emerald actually want to do? And so this card, I'm just sitting here with just puzzled, like, what does this card actually want to do? And then I need someone else to play this card to see its full effectiveness. But I'm not going to just toss it by the wayside. We'll see how it goes once we start seeing people play this in a more core constructed, practiced setting.
I will be honest, I think if I pull this as my legendary, I won't be super happy. I look at this card and I can see where maybe under some circumstances this could be good, because if you give them the lore to draw the card, now they have more lore than you, so she'll get 2 back. So like it's sort of like in a perfect world where this doesn't just immediately get removed, if everything goes to plan, they gain 2 lore, you gain 2 lore extra, right? But then you get to draw a card. It's like, that's fine. But I think there are going to be times where like you do this, you draw a card, give them the lore, expecting that like you're going to be able to kind of make some of that up, and then she just gets removed. And to be honest, it doesn't feel that great to like, I get a card, but they get 2 lore. I think in a lot of situations that would be pretty bad. I will go as far as to say I don't really like this card. I think, Mac, to your point, let's let some good deck builders figure out some way that this could cook. But on first glance, I don't think this is all that great. I think the next one could be good for Emerald. Maybe.
Yeah, and that's the iconic of the list, right? The 7-cost uninkable Buzz Lightyear Jungle Ranger. 7 strength, 5 willpower, so at least we're beefing up a little bit on the willpower end. It's a shift 5, quest for 2. First ability, Take Charge. When you play this character, you may return an action of cost 7 or less from your discard to your hand. Pretty interesting. Returning actions or just returning cards in general from your discard is a really good and powerful effect. And then Advanced Training. Whenever you play an action, chosen character gets +1 lore this turn. At first glance, when I saw this card, I was like, does Ruby Emerald have some play here with like the Half Shark and like all the singers from... Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Max Goof.
Goofy movie?
Goofy movie, thank you. Like, they play a lot of actions. Like, I don't know, maybe this just seems like a fun list. But then also Buzz is obviously a toy from Toy Story. And I know the 2 main toys lists are Amber, Emerald, and then Ruby also has a lot of toys with the new legendary Sid, right? So do we see a lot of toy synergy here? Buzz does not specifically have any toy synergy in his abilities, but does he make more sense as he's playing actions, as these more aggressive toys with higher lore? Maybe you can beef them up even more. We'll see how it goes. It is the iconic, so everyone's going to want to grab it anyways, or at least try and chase for that card. But I'm curious to see, especially this second ability, whenever you play an action, chosen character gets +1 lore, how effective you can like churn out actions in order to utilize this. I can also see this in an Emerald Sapphire in a ramp style deck. So we'll see how it goes. I know this is one where I'm, again, puzzled. What does Emerald want to do?
I think I could see this. I've seen some fun Robin Hood builds that are he's a Ruby one, right? Where he's a 1/4. When he
The
quests,
sharpshooter?
you get to look at the top 4, and then you get to play an action with, I think, 5 cost or less for free. And so, like, people sometimes do that and leverage that into, like, a Dragonfire or something. I think in some of those decks, there could be maybe some room for something like this, where you get to just really churn out actions a bunch. And, like, being able to replay things like Dragonfire is insane while establishing a character like this big. So, yeah, I mean, if you shifted this and you'd already played Dragonfire earlier, now all of a sudden he brings it back, you Dragonfire one of their big threats, and then you just give him the lore pip and he quests for 3. Like, that's really good. So I think there could be room for something like this. I don't love that it's a 7 cost uninkable, because yes, it has the shift target, but I think oftentimes what we see is, like, high cost uninkables have to be really amazing, or you have to have some sort of way to, like, get rid of those if you don't want them. So, like, maybe you run what's the cheese kid from
Bobby.
Bobby Zimmerowski, the cheese whiz guy. Maybe you, like, if you have this and you don't have the shift target, like in your opening post altar, you can then have a way to sort of, like, get rid of this, because it's not going to be that great in your opening hand if you don't have the shift buzz. But I think it's a fun card. Again, I think when you compare this to the 2 Amber legendaries, it's not particularly close to those 2.
Yeah. The one thing I'll give as a kind of a sprinkling of hope here is, in all the play testing that Ravensburger does while releasing new cards, there's a reason that they make certain cards uninkable. So at first glance, you might think, why is this uninkable? It kind of feels weird. I'm holding out hope that there's a reason there during their initial playtesting. So we'll see how strong that this card actually is and why it's uninkable, as again, we start seeing decks put these things together.
It's got to be you on this one, Mac.
Ruby, yeah.
Ruby.
Speaking of uninkables, the first Ruby legendary is a 6 cost uninkable Sid Phillips, the toy surgeon, 5/5. We've talked about it a little bit in one of our other kind of initial release videos. His first ability, playtime's over. When you play this character, you may banish another chosen character of yours. If you do, each opponent chooses and banishes one of their characters. And then the other one is double prizes. During your turn, whenever a toy character is banished, gain 2 lore. And I didn't mention it, this character, Sid himself, quests for 2. So kind of playing off the old Lady Tremaine from sets 1 through 4. The only kind of, obviously the main difference is you need to banish one of your characters in order to force one of your opponent's characters to banish one of theirs. It gets around ward, so that's really good if your opponent doesn't have a very wide board, and especially if that one character or 2 characters that are on board are warded. Your opponent can't get around that because they are choosing which character to banish, not you. This Sid also works really well with the Ruby Sid toys that have been announced as well. That's obviously the main goal with this Sid, is to keep banishing toys to get its effect, or its secondary effect of instantly gaining 2 lore. And this is the one where I talked about Amber Ruby toy synergy might be a thing. There's just more toys in Amber. There's more toys in Emerald as well. So Sid just becomes very strong if you're in a toy type of build to utilize his instant gain of two lore. So I don't think it'll see much play. Maybe I personally only think it's kind of like the old Tremaine that was like 2 or 3 copies, not necessarily a 4 of. I know Ryan pointed out that he sees it as, because it's so niche, you're only going to see it in a toy deck, so therefore you're going to see 4 copies of Sid. But we'll see where this goes. I'm just happy to see Sid in the game and utilizing the Toy Story theme. I think it's just really fun and thematic.
Yeah, I think, Mac, if there is like a toy meta, this becomes incredible. And if there are enough toy characters, this could kind of be an awesome card that you build around. Again, remains to be seen. It is still a 6 cost uninkable card. But I think Ruby kind of getting back into its banishing ways, maybe there's something here for this. Okay. The next one I think there's a bit more optimism for sure. Well, actually, plenty of optimism for Sid, but this one seems really cool.
Yeah, Mr. Incredible. This is a 5-cost Inkable. Another 6/4 stat line following Luisa Madrigal. A shift 3 following Luisa. First ability, always united. This character gets +2 strength for each other character you have in play. Doesn't have to be super, just each other character you have in play. But then his second ability does involve the super keyword. Whenever one of your super characters challenges another character, draw a card. You instantly see draw a card. Your eyes perk up a little bit, and then on top of that, if you see it in Ruby, you got to listen even further because there's not a lot of card draw in Ruby. I didn't mention that this character itself quests for 1. That's not the main point of this one. This card, we talked a lot about it off air. I think this card is meh at its current state. However, if supers become super prevalent in the core constructed game, this is the card that you have to look at. And secondly, I'm just like, if this in a world, if his stats were flipped and he has 4 strength, 6 willpower, I think this card would have been so much stronger because of his ability that he gets buffed with 2 strength for every character in play anyways. And maybe that's the reason why he's 6/4 and not 4/6, because then he would have been super overpowered. But what could have been if his strength and willpower were flipped, I could have seen a lot of potential in this card. But as of right now, it could get instantly nuked by a He Hurled His Thunderbolt. So we'll see. I'm kind of meh on this card unless supers are really important.
Yeah, I think Mac, that's a good point. Like the +2 strength for each other character that you have in play feels less relevant because of the fact that it's already a 6 strength. That becomes much more impactful if he has this higher survivability with like a 6 willpower. So, well said. I do think there could be a world here, especially if they print more super cards, where there's going to be enough to really kind of give this some juice where it becomes a really cool draw engine. Because even if you just played it on 5, have a couple of your supers, do some challenges, you draw 2, that feels amazing because now you've established this big 6/4 character, drew a couple cards. They probably want to get rid of this, but even if they do, like, you've been able to do the card draw thing. But I think, like we've seen in the past with Ruby, it tends to be a little bit challenging sometimes when challenges are your way of drawing cards. So we'll see how it cooks. It's just also really cool to see Mr. Incredible in Lorcana. All right, you gotta do the next 2 as well, because this is your other beloved color, Mac.
Oh, you're gonna keep my streak going. Okay. Well, here's on to Sapphire now. The first one is the 8-cost Inkable Kita Crystal Skyon. How do I say that? Makes me, I don't know. It's a 7/7, so definitely swings for a lot and is beefy. Shift 6, which I think is very important. Quest for 2. The first ability, Flood of Power. When you play this character, each player may put up to 5 cards from their discard into their inkwell face down exerted. It does not specify it needs to be inkable. Very important. And then the second one, the Path Revealed. Pay 7 ink, which seems look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and the other in the bottom of your deck. So basically pay 7 for Develop Your Brain, but hopefully, and the goal of this card is paying 7 won't feel as bad if you got a free 5 cards to put into your inkwell due to her first ability. I was very, very low on this last week, and I think I made the point, or if it wasn't on the podcast or the episode, it was in our conversations either before or after our recording. But this is the week that's actually piqued my interest even higher, and I'm more interested to see how this card plays out when Wilds Unknown is officially released, because knowing what Sapphire wants to do early game, and that's playing a Develop, playing Sail, playing a Visions of the Future, playing all these like low-cost actions that immediately go to your discard, singing One Jump Ahead. It's like, okay, I'm starting to see where it makes sense, where you might have 5 cards in your or in your discard at a point when you're going to play this Kita and then instantly just have a million more cards in your inkwell. And that's what Sapphire wants to do because it tends to have the big bombs to lay on your opponent. I also think what's very, very good about this card is the Shift 6, because over the course of the week, I really didn't realize how many potential shift targets there are for Kita, and I think that is a really big deal. To get this card a 7/7 body earlier in the game while ramping and then having basically a free develop your brain for the rest of the game. Okay, you've got me interested, so I'm interested to see where this goes. I mentioned it about Amethyst and Emerald, like, what do you want to do here? With Sapphire, I still feel that way, but it's more in a positive direction. Like, I'm excited to see where this goes. And not only with Kita, but the next card too, that we'll talk to in a little bit. But yeah, Kita's piqued my interest. What about you, Nathaniel?
Yeah, I think to your point, Mac, this is really interesting with like this hyper ramp effect like on play, and having the Shift 6, knowing how early this could get out in a Sapphire deck is really interesting. And even if she didn't, you could still conceivably get this character out by like roughly turn 5 or 6 for sure, even without that, just because you are ramping. So it allows you some time to get some of those things like Sail, Develop, Visions into your Inkwell, to your point, and could arguably take away some of the need for a card like Moana, to your point, Mac. I think you had mentioned this off the pod, in Sapphire decks, because of the fact that, one, this still has the princess synergy with your Cinderella, and it basically does what Moana's doing, but it does it like all at once in one singular turn. So that's kind of amazing, because now that you get this extra 5, maybe you could take a few turns off from inking to kind of focus on refilling your hand, because now you don't have to ink for turn anymore because you have all this ink. So that's really interesting. This card does seem really cool. I think the pay 7 ink to do a Develop Your Brain is just funny. And the fact that you've hyper ramped, to your point, Mac, does make it feel a little bit less bad, because you've just added 5 into your Inkwell anyways from her effect. So super interesting card. I think she will potentially see some play. All right, Mac, our last Sapphire.
Sure. This is, like I said, I'm excited to see where this goes. I know you're actually lower on this Ursula card than I might be initially. The 3-cost inkable Ursula Deal Maker, 2 strength, 4 willpower. Quite a bargain is the first ability. When you play this character and whenever she quests, another chosen character gets +2 lore this turn. And then, by the way, at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted, put chosen character of yours into your Inkwell face down and exerted. She quests for 1. So I think any card that you see that on play and on quest, basically shelling out a free lore, is something you have to look at. And then being able to ramp at the end of each turn if this character is exerted. Obviously, that's what Sapphire wants to do. At first glance, you might seem like, it's not very strong, but the fact that it's only 3 cost, there's not many characters at that early stage of the game that's going to be able to remove a 4 willpower character very effectively. So at the very least, you'll be able to obviously get the extra lore on play, but in theory, the next turn when she quests, give the extra lore to another character upon quest. And then at the end of that turn, if you feel like she's going to get banished, you can even put her in your Inkwell. So it's like, okay, I'm interested to see where this goes, because I think because it's such a low cost, this just seems like a better, what's the alien character from Lilo and Stitch?
Pleakley.
Yeah. This just seems like a better Pleakley to me. So we'll see where it goes.
Actually, Mac, now that you have drawn that comparison to Pleakley, that was another card where I think upon release people were really low on Pleakley, and now he's starting to actually see some play in some of these Sapphire decks. And if your game plan with Sapphire is to just work your way to a Raging Storm anyways, if you can get some bonus lore early and use this Ursula as yet another way to hyper ramp your way to 8, that's not really that bad. Like, I think about what's the Amber Sapphire guy that you get to look at your opponent's hand and remove a non-character?
Ludwig
von Drake, I think is his name, right? Yeah. If you play him, right, you get to do that, and then you play this behind that character, and then you quest for 2 with Ludwig. They want to get rid of that thing. He goes into your Inkwell, and then you do it again quest, and then she goes into your inkwell, like you have ramped a ton and you've gotten some solid lore in a world where you haven't gotten the extra lore in today's world with Pleakley. So very well said. I'm a little bit more sold on it now, but this is definitely not a card that I personally probably like playing, just with my own play style, but could have some interesting play for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's the strongest one by any means in this set of legendaries, but this is firmly in the middle for me and very much probably one of the more unknowns. Like, what is this card going to do? So I'm excited to see where it goes. Both Sapphires, for that matter.
Nice. Well, I'll take it home with Steel then. So the first is one that we have talked about a little bit already because it is the other iconic from this set, and that is the 5-cost uninkable Merida Formidable Archer. She is a 3/5, so she has kind of that more slightly lower strength stat and then a higher willpower that we've kind of been talking to a little bit.
She doesn't need the strength.
So exactly, because when you play this character, you may return an action card named 3 arrows from your discard to your hand. Whenever one of your actions deals damage to an opposing character, deal 2 damage to that character. So there's obviously the synergy there with the 3 arrows. Also, she quests for 2, by the way. There's obviously the synergy there with 3 arrows, being able to deal tons of damage. Your other damage actions getting some pretty massive buffs here, right? Like a Fire the Cannons now is dealing 4, which is insane. He hurled his Thunderbolts. Now we're doing 6. It does an extra 2 for strength. So like that is actually interesting to me, I think, because there are times where you're playing a bigger deck and you do just need to stretch out like a little bit more damage to make that removal song feel really good, like it normally does when you're playing it like in the earlier game. This could be incredibly impactful where, you know, somebody lays down like a purple Hades and they're like, yeah, this is safe, right? Like they only have like 2 characters on board. It's going to be really hard to sing this down with the strength of a Raging Fire. But all of a sudden now the 4-cost thing that came down before this can sing He Hurled His Thunderbolt, get the buff from Merida, and all of a sudden now that big thing is gone. So that's definitely going to be there. And again, I think we talk about these little extra incremental damages, like how impactful they truly are. I think we're going to see just how much that's true with something like a Merida. I think it's an interesting card too that sort of might run in a little bit against like what the Angel thing is doing now, where you're like discarding to deal 2 damage, because that wouldn't really be a benefit to something like a Merida. So I think that'll be interesting too to see kind of where her place is in conjunction with a card like Angel existing.
Yeah, you make a good point. Merida, Angel, you talked about Moana and Nikita. There's a lot of like butting heads of cards from legendaries of the previous set, which I think is kind of interesting in a funny trend. But with Merida, I think between the 2 Amber legendaries and this one, though, these are the three firmly in the top 3. And I don't care what order you put as first, second, or third, but I think these are the 3 best legendaries of this set. Merida, I think, is going to be awesome, especially with the rise in Amber Steel songs resurgence. That's just more songs that can deal direct damage. Angel, to your point, might actually be good for like, sure, you want to bring this action back, but then you can just use it to discard with Angel, and then I don't know. It'll be a lot of fun to see where this Merida goes. I'm very excited for it. I've been in love with playing Blue Steel over the course of the last set or 2, and I think this has got some potential in that Blue Steel list. Not necessarily, well, it is a princess, so you can extra ramp again with Cinderella, but not even necessarily in a strictly princess build. I think this is just good on curve with what Blue Steel wants to do, or Sapphire Steel wants to do. So I'm very excited for this card. This is going to be really fun to see how it shakes out. I definitely see why it's uninkable, because dealing direct damage is a strong enough effect in it of itself. So you gotta get creative with your uninkable counts, because for balancing purposes in this Merida, and the iconic looks absolutely stunning. So I think it's very key too that this has 5 willpower. I think 5 willpower in sets 1 through 4, when Along Came Zeus was prevalent, if you had 6 willpower, Zeus was less effective. But now that Zeus is out and now it's He Hurled His Thunderbolt, if anything that has 5 or more, kind of negates the instant impact that he hurled his Thunderbolt has, and the survivability of Merida is a lot stronger. So 5 willpower is key, and I'm very excited to see where Merida goes. Great card.
Actually, now that we're talking about it, Mac, I think there is going to be a world where this definitely exists alongside Angel, because they're basically giving you 2 different routes. You know, if you don't have some of the songs, you can still get the stretch damage with Angel. If you've got some of the actions and stuff right, you can kind of lean more into the Merida effect. So I think it gives you definitely another avenue, and it makes those removal songs and actions in a lot of these steel decks just that much more scary.
Yeah, good point. I think this is the purpose of our conversations, right? Where at first we were like, might not be very good, but maybe it is going to be really good. We'll see how it goes. And especially with like steals like draw a card, discard a card effects, like odds are you're going to have these 3 arrows in the discard, and it's going to be easy to recoup it with Merida's first ability, right?
Yeah, and great point. Like yet another engine, right? As like a fake card draw, right? You're drawing and discarding, but then you're going to recur it later. So that actually does have tremendous synergy with something like an Angel, because you could just choose that as the discarded thing and then use that as like fake card draw. So you got to just use a Fire the Cannons basically with Angel for free. Like it ended up in the end not actually costing you a card from your hand, because Merida just brought the 3 arrows back anyways. So that's, I think, going to be super interesting, and some fun playlines are going to be created from that. The final legendary is the 7-cost Inkable Mrs. Incredible Determined Rescuer. She is a 5/4, so a stat line that Mac loves. Just kidding. And she's a shift 5, and she has 2 effects. The first is your characters gain resist +1, and the second, which is during your turn, whenever another character is banished in a challenge, you may ready chosen super character. If you do, they can't quest for the rest of this turn. And she's also a 3-quester. So I think upon first glance, what I do like about this, when you compare this just like straight up with the Buzz, like he's a 7/5, she's a 5/4, so the stats aren't quite there. She's also a quest for 3, that's pretty awesome. But she's a 7-cost Inkable. So I think that really matters, because then if you don't have the shift target, and this is like really early in the game, like you can just ink this and that's okay. I think in a supers build, she's going to be awesome. We saw Ryan made this point about how powerful Cogsworth was in the olden days pre-rotation by giving everything resist. So I think that's a really powerful effect with this. Sadly, she doesn't also have ward, so she can still get targeted, which would then remove that resist that you've just given everything. And then I think that the second effect could be interesting if you set it up correctly, and you can kind of get a bunch of questing and challenging, or like tons of challenging in, to essentially board wipe with this if you had a bunch of supers set up on the turn that you played her, if your opponent has exerted their board. Or my mind went to, in a deck, like if there was some world where like you had lots of supers still, or even just a few with like a Demona deck, right, where you're just going to force exert all their stuff, and now you get to challenge into everything, but you also get to, with your supers, challenge twice while getting resist +1. That could be just an absolute like hammer blow turn, where if you play this the turn before you play your Demona and it doesn't get answered, you probably just win against a lot of decks like on that turn right there, because that's kind of amazing if you're like removing their stuff for free. So I could see this, Mac. I think this has got some potential, but I think it will take some tinkering.
Yeah, you mentioned not a great stat line with the 4 willpower. At least it has the resist, because the resist does apply to herself as well, which is great. I think the first thought I have on this is, I think this is it might be the best legendary in sealed or like limited, because anything with resist is really good, but anything that allows your things to re-ready. In limited, we see a lot of stale board states, and whoever makes the first move in challenging is very key, right? And this character, its ability is based on challenging and re-readying, so you're able to quest and then ready those people depending on how you challenge, right? So I think this will be a really good limited card if you pull it. Kind of interesting with the other supers is a lot of the other supers we see are in Ruby and Amethyst, but this is a steel card. So I'm curious to see how this fits in the overall super theme, considering the fact that its ability is super focused. So we'll see how that shakes out. But overall, very good in limited. Will it see core constructed play? I am not very optimistic. But the last point, I continue to chuckle on one of the statements you said in one of our friend groups, Nathaniel. It is, you made the point about like when how far I'll go replacement. I forget what it's called off the top of my head. What more can I do or something like that. That is like a nerfed version of how far I'll go. And this just seemed is like a nerfed version of what Cogsworth was, giving everything resist, but Cogsworth also had ward, so you couldn't do anything about it. So it's just more to that statement you made that Ravensburger, I think, started to realize when the sets 1 through 4 metas were taking shape a year and a half ago now, while they were starting to develop these cards. They realized, oh, when we get to this stage, we got to nerf some of these really good cards. We like what they do, but we got to nerf them in a different way that makes them more balanced. And I think the Cogsworth comparison with Mrs. Incredible here is a perfect comparison. And I just find it kind of funny and humorous to the fact that it's another one of those kind of nerfed abilities.
Well, and I think what's funny too, right, about that is Cogsworth was I believe a 2/5 quest for 2. And he was a Sapphire card, and a lot of times, right, this was be a blue steel or a Sapphire steel build would have that card. So it is funny that also this is like the companion color of what Cogsworth was. But instead of being a 5 cost shift 3, it's a 7 cost shift 5 with like bigger stats and like it quests for 3 and kind of has some other like super synergy in it too. But again, the second line of text, much like what else can I do, feels like that other part where they're kind of throwing us a bone of like, yeah, and all your stuff gets ward. And like, yeah, and you can ready your supers, right? Like it's kind of like, it is different, we promise, right? But it kind of feels like this is the balanced version of that original card. So yeah, I think I'll double down on that being the thing that this feels like, once again, we're getting a slightly more balanced card than what used to be a very common kind of highly played card of a day. Of a bygone age.
Yeah, good point. So final thoughts for me on these legendaries. I really enjoy the fact that they're trying to bring out character traits like allies, supers, villains. I think we'll see toys. I can't forget about toys. Like we're going to see a lot of more of these character trait focused decks. I'm personally very excited about that. My second point, Amber. Holy cow. How good is Amber going to be? Not only with these 2 legendaries, but with the recency with Winterspell. Amber got a lot of love there. We'll see how strong Amber's going to be. And the third one too, thinking back to this season or this rotation set, starting with Fabled. Whispers was, we have discussed at length before on how the Whispers legendary set was just so strong. Almost every legendary had seen some play at some point with Cinderella, Goliath, Hades, Demona, what have you. Just so much play with that set. I will say though, with Winterspell at first glance, I think the 3 of us were very much like, power level doesn't seem as strong. But with Winterspell, we started to see like the legendaries trend up as people started to figure out that set. I kind of get that same vibe with this. Besides Amber and besides Merida, it's just like, where these could be good, but someone better than me at deck building needs to figure these out so I can see it. That's the vibe I'm getting. So we'll see where these goes. I'm excited in the direction that Lorcana's going with this legendary list, but I need someone much smarter than me to figure it out. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I do also agree that it does feel like Amber is very much getting spoiled, but we got our day in the sun with Amethyst during Whispers.
Don't put
right?
me in that category. Don't say we.
Sorry, us Amethyst players, we got our time in the sun where, I would argue there were 7 really good legendaries released in that set, which is Goliath, Cinderella, Webby from those 3 ink colors, and then Hercules and Headless Horseman are both quite good, and then the 2 kind of course the ones that we go right to are Demona and Hades, right? So 2 of the really the 7 really good legendaries were from Amethyst. So I guess Amber can get their time where they get to be, 2 very good with 1 Dale seemingly unbelievably good. cards coming out for them. And we could see just how it completely warps what happens with some of these deck builds. I think it'll be really fun, really interesting. But the Wild's timeline is extremely fast, right? We only have like 6 weeks with it, 8 weeks with it, right? Because I think it's like a month after pre-release and it's already into set champs. So it'll probably feel like it's here and gone before you know it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that just means the after set champs, there's going to be a little bit longer of a break between rotation number 2. But yeah, I am very excited for Wilds Unknown. I'm excited to see where the meta shakes out because we have a lot more card availability for core constructed play. We're also getting in the middle of Infinity and a lot of the Infinity DLCs. So we're definitely going to start chatting about that as Infinity prep is just around the corner. And let's bring back that beloved Ruby Sapphire deck. But we've talked a lot at length about these legendaries. I'm excited. Pre-release is around the corner, so we got to chat about that too. So let's put a wrap on this show. We post all of our content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We have both the audio and video recording on our YouTube channel. We post on Instagram from time to time as well, so please be sure, leave a like. We do look at comments, so if you have suggestions or if you want to reach out and give us your thoughts on any deck builds and what have you, on any of our programs, I guess, you can find us. Please comment and we will reach out and at least take a look, and who knows, maybe your comment will be featured on an episode. That being said, Nathaniel, thank you so much for joining. Ryan will be back next week once he figures out his internet. But for the time being, let's get the duck out of here.